Alright, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the time you are watching this video. Alright, my name is John Boada, and we're going to learn something on database and web technologies. So I would be your facilitator for this particular lesson. Alright, so without wasting much time, let's jump right into it. Alright, so if we talk about web technologies and database, what are we trying to say? So in this lesson, we're going to learn what database is, what we can use database for, and why are we even using database in the first place. Alright, so there are some objectives that we would go through. So let's quickly glance through. So by the end of the lesson, you would be able to define database and explain the concept of relational database, identify entities, attributes, primary keys, foreign keys, and so on, explain many-to-many relationship and how to solve those many-to-many relationship using the junction table. Alright, and then you describe the consequences of data redundancy, and you would be able to state some characteristics, at least 3, of relational database. Alright, so with this, there are some key things that you need to know before we dive much deeper into it. So these key things that you need to know, we will talk about it briefly. So 1, you have to learn, you have to fix, and then you have to build. That is the blueprint for today. So why do we have to learn? We are going to understand relational database entities attributes. So I'm going to pick them one after the other. I would explain everything to you, and then you get to know why this is that, and then this is also that. Alright, so let me start with the slide. So this is the anatomy of database or data. So data actually on its own doesn't have meaning. Data does not have meaning, but when it is being processed into information, it gets meaning. Alright, so when you want a data to have a meaning, that means you have to process it. So we have some certain things that comes together to describe a data for it to have a meaning. And so we have the first one, which is an entity. If we say an entity, what is an entity? Entity simply means something that is real in the world, or a real world object or concept. So for example, an entity could be a human being, it could be a place. In summary, we could say that an entity or entities are nouns. Entities are nouns. So they are nouns that have certain features or attributes, and those attributes, those features are what we term as attributes, because attributes are properties or characteristics of the entity. So with the human being or people that I mentioned earlier, we could pick someone and then describe that person. So if we say John is an entity, but John have some characteristics or some properties, certain things that describe John. John is tall, John is dark. Those things are attributes. So when we talk of entity and attributes, entities are the real world objects, and then those things that describe the entity are known as the attribute. So we say entities are nouns and attributes are verbs. And now we've gotten to understand what an entity is and what an attribute is. So let me pick another instance. Let's say a book. A book is an entity, but the book would have different things describing it, such as the one who wrote the book, the year in which it was published, the book title. All these things are describing what? The book. So we say an entity is a real world object or concept, and an attribute describes it. Now, what then is a record or row? It's a single complete entry. So records are mostly what? Horizontal. Records are what? Horizontal. And then we have what we call a field. A field, or what? A column. Do you get it? A field. So a field is simply a single data value in a column. So if we pick an entity, the things that describes it, they are arranged in a what? In a record form or in a row form, and those things becomes the what? The attribute that describe the entity. All right. So in the past, why are we even learning a database or data now? Because in the past, this was how data was being used or accessed, and in the present, this is how we use data or database. So in the past, we could see that with this image illustration, we could see that everything was scattered. You would have what? Duplicated data, because the same data that you have here about one same person, about John, you would have the same data at another place about John, which was what? Making data what? Double, or in what? Multiple folds, which is talking about the same thing. So duplicated data is one of the things that was done in the past. And then how to search. Imagine you having a pile of papers or a pile of books, and then you have to look for a particular book. You see, it's going to be difficult for you to see. So you would have to pick the books one by one, and then you check whether you are going to see the one that you are looking for. Sometimes you would finish going through and you will not even get to see. So that is one of the problems that we were facing in the past when it comes to what? Data search. All right. And then inconsistent updates or inconsistent updates, as in, if let's say you have to update 10 files of your own. So if John have 10 different files and he has to update, sometimes he would update 9 or 8 or 5, and then the rest will not be updated. Or two of the same files could be placed in one of the files that he need to update, and then at the end of the day, some of the files or some of the things that he needs to update will not be in the other ones. And then the risk of loss, sometimes you even lose majority of your things. But now that we are learning about database now, which is an electronic storage, we can what? Have a structured data, because with this there is an instant search and then efficient management. All these things comes into play with the help of certain things, such as the tables, the keys, and then what? Integrity, which is called which helps us get the concept of what? Relational database. So if you say a relational database, what it simply means is that it's just a table which have keys and then rules governing it. So the keys are not the keys that we use to open doors, but the idea is from that thing, because a key allows you have access into a particular room or house or company or whatever. So without a key, you cannot unlock a door and enter. So a key helps you do what? Have access into a room. The same thing keys do over here when it comes to relational database. So we have a table. The table contains the data, and then we have keys. Those keys allow you to access the data that are in the table. And then the integrity, they are the rules that is governing how you arrange things in your table. Please, hope we get this point. All right. So this simply here I would go into it deep when we get ahead. And this relational database, this was introduced by E.F. Codd in the 1970s. So he introduced these three key things that a relational database should have: a table, keys, and then what? integrity. That is the rule governing it. Now, as I was explaining earlier, when it comes to database, I told you that entities are nouns and the attributes are what? The verbs. Or entities are the real world objects, and then the attributes are the characteristics or the features describing the entity. So as you can see here, this is an illustration to help you understand the concept better. So entity, the object, which is the human being there. So let's say this human being is John, and then you could see that John has borrower ID, borrower name, email, class. So in this instance, John has a borrower ID, meaning if John is going to borrow something, he can use the ID. He has a name, which is John, and then John has email, John has a class. So all these things help you describe who? John, who is the entity. And attribute becomes the columns of your table. So when you are creating a table and you create the entity, you just have to do what? Add attributes which will describe it. So imagine, let's say you go to the bank and then you want a loan, or you want something. They don't just stand up and then they will be like, oh okay, come for it. No, every customer who comes to the bank has a bank account. Every customer has bank account, and this bank account number that they give to you, they help them do what? Get access to every information about you. So when you go to the bank, they will just ask you, account number, and then they will input. So those things, aside your name, those things help what? Get other information about you. So the other information that they get about you are the what? Attributes, and then your ID or your name are also what helps you. But with you, actually you become the entity. Now the master key. So as I was talking about keys or entity, we have two keys. In here I talked about keys. That is the three things that make up what? A relational database. That is keys, tables, and integrity. So keys, we have two types of keys. That is the foreign key and the primary key. Foreign key and a primary key. So in the normal English term, if we say something is primary, that is the first thing. Primary colors, primary school, the first things that you have to do, you have to have access to. So we have primary keys and foreign keys. And if you say something is foreign, it means that thing is coming from somewhere. It doesn't belong actually to where it is, but it's coming from somewhere, and then it is seen among things that it has some relation with or some characteristics with. That is a foreign key. So foreign as in coming from somewhere, and then primary as in the first thing that you have to have access to. So primary keys, they are unique keys that help you identify what? Characteristics of an entity. So with John like this, we could use John's name or the account number that he has as a primary key. Yes, as a primary key. So in here, these are rules governing what? Primary keys, and then rules governing what? Foreign keys. So with the primary key, it uniquely identifies every record. Like I was telling you, the bank account number that they've given to you, it's for only you. That is why you cannot give a bank account and then they will go and get a different person's information. No, that bank account belongs to you. So when you get to the bank and then they ask you your bank account, it means they've made your bank account what? Your primary key. Or when they are going into the bank's database, they've assigned bank account numbers as what? Primary keys. That is why it's different, it's unique, it's just for you, it only describes you. So your bank account number cannot be used for a different person because it's just for you. So it uniquely identifies every record, and then must be unique. Like I was saying, your index number, for instance, when you are on campus, your index number cannot be that of someone's also what index number. If you are going to write your final exams, you cannot have the same index number as someone. Each and every student would have a unique what index number. So that is what primary key is about. It cannot be now. Now, when you are creating your table, when we mentioned the three things that comes together to form relational database, we talked about tables, and in a table that you've created, you cannot set your primary key to be now, as in you don't put anything over there. It cannot happen. So whenever you create a table, there must be a primary key, and that primary key cannot be empty. Do you get it? And then when the last one I'll talk about is never changes. Like, we don't often change primary keys. Most of the time it's constant. That is why the index number that they give to you, you use that index number from start of your school. Let's say if it's a secondary school, if it's a tertiary institution, they will use that same index number from start to finish. The same way with your account number that you have at the bank, they don't change it. If they change it, means maybe you are not using the account or it's dormant, so they would even close the account for some time to see if you would follow up before they give to someone else. And even with that, they don't do that as in short term. It's a long term. It takes years for them to do that. So primary keys, most of the time we don't change them. They are what? They are constant. All right. And then when it comes to foreign key refers to the primary key in another table. Like I was explaining to you, when we talk of foreign simply means something that is from somewhere. So it's a primary key from another table. So let's say we have a book table, like we have here. You see this one, we have book table here, and then we have loan table. Now when you come to the book table, this is a table that we've created for a book. The primary key in here is the book ID, meaning they've given the book what? An ID number, and then the book ID has some attributes or things describing it. So we have the book title, the book author, then the book owner ID. So all these three, the title, author, and owner ID, are describing what? The book. And if we are to search the book anywhere in a different table or in a different database, we have to link its primary key into that table, and that is why the primary key we are seeing here is linked to the loans table. So in here, if we are to enter the book ID, let's say if the book ID is 001, if you are to enter it in the loans table at the book ID column, we are going to get the information that is in the book table. So that is the fascinating thing about relational database. And then we have some relationship we have to talk about. In relational database, we have one-to-one relationship, we have the one-to-many relationship, and the many-to-many relationship. And one-to-one, mostly it's okay. One-to-many, it's okay. But many-to-many creates problem. It's like you having, should I say, a web, as in the one that Anansi have been doing. So you having like chunks of let me say ropes, and then they are crossing each other. You see, it's going to be difficult for you to do what? To separate them. And that is the many-to-many relationship. And when it comes to the many-to-many relationship, one thing that you can do to solve this issue so that you not have such clustered thing is using what we term as the junction table or the bridge. junction table. So if we want to solve this problem, we have to create a table that we call that table what? A junction table, a bridge, in order for the table to have what? A one-to-one or one-to-many, because the one-to-one is okay and the one-to-many is okay, but we can't have many-to-many. So in order to solve the many-to-many, we need to bring in what? A bridge or a junction table. And why did we even call it what? A bridge or a junction table? So in a normal layman's term, you see, bridge connects two areas together, two areas that you cannot just access easily. So you see, most of the time, if there is a river and a river dividing a road, and one car is from left, one car is from right, they cannot do what? Bypass each other. There needs to be what? A bridge, so that the car coming from the right can easily what? Pass, and then the one from the left can also what? Pass. But without a bridge, they would have to stop. So with the bridge, it helps us have access to the other what? Many to many what? Relationship that we have. Do you get it? Now, dangers of redundancy. Now, there is one thing about redundancy. I talked about it earlier. You see, earlier where there was nothing like a relational database, everything was scattered, and like I was explaining to you, you would have to always update your file, or go and then put your files there. So you always have more than one of your file, maybe in a folder or something like that, and it increased what? The storage bloat. So instead of your file to have, let's say, 5 kg weight, because of redundancy, you printing more papers, sometimes you don't even know that you have that particular document or paper in there. You will print another one and then add it, and then you get to see that it's going to increase the size of your file, and then with time the size is going to be what? Bigger. And if the size is bigger, it's going to cause what? Slow performance. That is, even if you are using data which is not relational, it's going to cause what? A slow what? Performance. It's just like a truck having load of items in it. It can't speed up because the load in it are too much. And data inconsistency and update anomaly. So redundancy, unnecessary repetition of the same data, as in you don't even know that you have it there and you go and add it again. Meanwhile, you just need one of that file in your document that you've opened or whatever, but because you didn't know, there was nothing which was checking whether you've updated that thing or whether you have that file in there, you have to print and then do what? Add it to it. And there comes what? Normalization, as in split data into focus tables, assign primary keys, and then you connect with what? Foreign keys. So to avoid the issue of redundancy, that is when normalization what? Comes in, so that we can create table for each of the what? Of the entities. We can create table for each of the entities, and when we create the table, we assign primary keys to each table, so that when we want to access information about that entity, we can use the primary key. And then to make the work easier, we need to connect the tables, and when we are connecting tables, we use the primary keys. So the primary key of its original table would now turn or become what? A foreign key in another table, and with that one information we can easily access anywhere. So nowadays we could all see that when you go to the bank, most of the things that they ask you, or most of the time they'll ask you to produce your Ghana card. It's because they have now linked all your information to your Ghana card number, and that Ghana card number is an example of what? A primary key. So with the insertion of your Ghana card number, they can get all the information that they want to know about you in their database. That is one good thing. So after this class and in our next lesson, we are going to practicalize this in class. So we're going to demonstrate. I will do it and then you also. So in creating a database, a relational database table, this is how we go about it. This is the syntax. So you write create table borrower. So you create a table and then you give the table what a name, like we were having create table. If it was to be a book, you write create table book. Do you get it? Now this is a borrower word table that we are creating, as in someone who is coming for a loan. We are using that as an instance. Now we must get certain things about this what borrower. So we must get one is the borrower ID. So with this, you see that we have varchar here. This means that the borrower ID can be variable and then what character in combination, and it shouldn't exceed 5. And we are using the borrower ID as our what primary key. So with this primary key, if we set it anywhere that we want to find it, we can, with the borrower ID becoming a foreign key in another table. Now we have the borrower name, which should be varchar, and then we've set it to 100, meaning it shouldn't exceed what 100. Then we say not now. It means at this section we cannot write borrower name with the, like we cannot leave it empty. So compulsorily it should have something over there, or we should have something over there. You cannot tell me that the one who is coming to borrow money doesn't have a name. It doesn't happen. So we say what not now. So this not now, we call it what constraint. So this is part of the rules that is governing the construction of what a relational database table, as it was introduced by EF code. You get. Then we have email. We are saying the email should be a variable and a character. It shouldn't exceed 100 what variable characters. And then we have class. It shouldn't also exceed what 10. Then you close and terminate. So if you don't terminate, it wouldn't, you're not going to get the expected result that you want. And expanding the blueprint, so create table book. So this is another table. So book ID, it shouldn't exceed 5, and we are going to use the book ID as the primary key. Then here we have the title, as in it shouldn't be not now. So you cannot tell me you have a book and then the book doesn't have a title. How do I even go search for the book? You get. So book ID is the primary key, and the title, which is a variable character, it shouldn't exceed 150 variable characters, and it shouldn't be empty. Then the author's name, then the genre, which is whether it's a novel or whatever, then you put that here, and then you connect both two. So this is a junction table, so you are connecting two tables. So in here you see that the foreign key, we have the borrower ID, which was a primary key in the borrower table, and then here we have the book ID. This is the book ID, which was also a primary key in another table, and they have become foreign keys in the loan table because they are not in their original table. And with the help of these foreign keys in here, we can access the information that we want in the borrower ID table, the borrower table, and then the book table. So the final system check, or in conclusion, we have talked about what makes a database relational, the 3 characteristics of relational database, as in we talked about the keys, these ones, the keys, the table, and then the integrity. Okay. And how do you resolve many to many relationships? We talked about how we can solve that by using the junction or the bridge to solve that. And then what are the consequences of data redundancy? We talked about that. How do we eliminate redundancies? We've talked about that one too. All right, so from here, what we will be doing is have access to some quiz, and I will leave the quiz link in the blog session, so you can test yourself on those quiz to see how best you have learned or you have grasped the concept of database design. Okay, so the link is there, you can just click on it and you answer. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next class. Bye bye.